it's better to do something imperfectly than to not do it, which I think is hard because I'm so used to like, this has to be 100% right. But along the way, it's not been perfect. It's been a little bit hard. It's been, oh, we don't have enough rehearsal time. The last 16 counts of this piece are just not going to be what I would make them if I had another 4 hours. But it's imperfect, but really special.
I'm Caitlin, a former professional ballerina turned dance educator and career mentor, and this is the Brainy Ballerina podcast. I am here for the aspiring professional ballerina who wants to learn what it really takes to build a smart and sustainable career in the dance industry. I'm peeling back the curtain of the professional dance world with open and honest conversations about the realities of becoming a professional dancer. Come along to gain the knowledge and inspiration you need to succeed in a dance career on your terms. Hello and welcome to the Brainy Ballerina podcast. I'm your host, Caitlin Sloan, and I am joined today by Elizabeth Troxler. Elizabeth is an accomplished ballet teacher, choreographer, and performer with over 30 years of experience training dancers from beginners to professionals. She's a certified teacher with the Royal Academy of Dance and currently serves as the artistic director of Chronicle Dance Theater. She is also the founder of the award-winning Allongé Films and creator of Ballet Boost, an app offering ballet classes and an allegro vocabulary section with video demonstrations. We're going to chat all about Elizabeth's experience today and this really cool new app. But before we get into that, Elizabeth, I would love to hear why you took your very first dance class.
Oh, thank you. It's awesome to be here. This is my favorite story to tell. There were a lot of us. There were 5 children in my family. When I was 5, I guess there were only 4 of us. But my mom was very busy, obviously. And I used to dance around. And the only reason I think that I'm a dancer today is 2 reasons. We have a neighbor that was an artist, like a visual artist. And she had also been a dancer. And so she made these 5x7 note cards for me that had the positions, little dancers drawn, and some steps and like retire and things like that. And I used to walk around the house doing the cards. So I do the little glissade and I do the little ensemble following the instructions on these cards that she made for me. And my mom is a violist and also teaches private music lessons at home. And so one of the mothers said, well, where does your daughter dance? And my mom says, oh, she doesn't take dance. And the mom said, well, she should. But my mother was too busy to take me. So that mom picked me up and took me to dance with her daughter that was approximately my age for an entire year before my mom actually could get to the studio. So that's how I started. So thanks to those 2 women who I might be able to remember the lady who took me to dance's name, but I have no idea who the artist was. But to this day, that's why I dance.
Oh, that's amazing. What was your training like growing up?
Well, I started in a small dancing school where we did ballet, tap, and jazz, all in an hour and a half. And that's what I did for a while, like just once a week. My mom went in, maybe I was 6 or 7, and the teacher said, well, your daughter's very talented. So then my mom started getting me private lessons and whatnot. But it was still just once a week until I was 8. And then I went off to Interlaken for the summer. And at that point, it was 8 weeks for 8-year-olds. So, which is so long. I look at an 8-year-old now and I'm like, my parents were crazy sending me away. But for 3 summers, I went to Interlaken for 8 weeks. And then I went to Chautauqua. So that was when summer programs were kind of new. There weren't that many that you could go to. SAB was like the big one. If you got into that, it was amazing. And then there were like 3 others. I went to Chautauqua one summer, and from that, I actually met a lot of dancers that were going to Pittsburgh Ballet Theater at the time. And they were like, well, come take class at PBT with us. I think I was 12 then. So I kept it my 1 day a week. I might have been up to 2 days a week at my studio, and I added 5 days a week at Pittsburgh Ballet Theater. So I had lots of extra ballet because it was always like my love. I didn't love jazz. I didn't love other things. My mother just made me take them all. Now, I had a very smart teacher. Like, she knew that I was talented and like used to break down battement tendu for me, like sit on the floor with me and my feet when I was just 8 years old. I learned a lot of like great detail work and things from her, but it was just that repetitive, all the ballet classes just added up. And I did that through about my junior year of high school. And then I ended up training with Mansour Kalametdinov, who was a Bolshoi dancer. He was a principal character dancer with the Bolshoi forever and friends with Irina Kolpakova, who came and trained us one summer. So I love to say that. So I had some strict rushing training as well, but it's just a couple times a week on top of the other that I was doing. But it was good because I had kind of a nice range of things. My teacher took me to her teacher twice a week because I was homeschooled for 2-hour private ballet lessons, which were torture because the lady was very old and she used to sit there with her little cane and it was just me. And she had this big book of exercises that she had written down from every teacher she had ever had a class from. So there was stuff from like Ballet Russe in there. Like it was wild. So she would sit and read me the exercise and I had to do what she said. So I think I learned a lot about the names of steps back then with these lessons with Andre. I learned a lot, but it was terrifying. So yeah, I had a good range growing up and I always did tap and jazz as well along the way.
What was your transition into a professional career like?
Oh, I always wanted to be just ballet, ballet, ballet. It was kind of like my main love. Although by the time I hit about 14, 15, I got pretty good at jazz because all of a sudden my technique kicked me over to being better than some of the people that just, loved jazz. And then I like learned to move a little bit more and it felt good. So I really did kind of like everything, but I had this great thing in my head that said, oh, real dance is ballet. So I have to be a classical ballet dancer. How wrong I was and how much I've learned since then. So I was supposed to go to Butler University to train there. And about 2 weeks before, I decided, forget that. I'm just going to go off and dance because I got a job after to dance in Vegas. My father was not super pleased. So I deferred for a year and ended up actually not going to Vegas right away. I was in Arizona staying with my grandmother and I was kind of up and back to Vegas a little bit. And she got sick with cancer. So I ended up staying and taking care of her. But at that point, that's where I found RAD because the training system in Arizona was the Royal Academy of Dance. So I didn't do that until I was, 18, 19. And then after that year, I said, what was I thinking? I don't think I want to dance in Vegas. So I called up an old teacher who is now the artistic director of a company and just asked if I could just come and take class. And she's like, well, you teach tap and jazz, right? And I said, yes. She's like, well, you're hired because we need a company dancer and we have some tap and jazz in the school as supplemental classes that we need to have taught. So that was my jump into my professional career. And I danced with that ballet company for a while and then came back to the same director a little bit later on and then didn't find the theater world until a lot later.
So can you share a few of the highlights from your professional dance, performance career?
I'd have to say in the ballet world, probably my favorite thing, my favorite time of performing is probably when I did Swan Lake. I loved that. I got to do the pas de trois, which had some of my favorite variations in it. So that one was a fun one. I loved doing Lilac Fairy in Sleeping Beauty. That was perfect for me because it wasn't quite the stress of doing Aurora, but I also was able to, I think even back then I didn't recognize it as much, but I was really into storytelling. And I was like, all of a sudden I'm the character that's very important for telling the story and bringing her safely through. And so that was a fun role that I really enjoyed doing. I think I just love that storytelling. So that was kind of my ballet favorites. In the theater world, probably my favorite role I played was Maggie in Brigadoon, which is very much a dance role, but I had a few lines and, I had to do the ensemble singing, but she's in love with the character and he ends up dying. He's not really in love with her. He's in love with someone else. He ends up dying and Maggie gets to do a very soulful dance at his funeral, which back when Agnes DeMille choreographed it, it was 9 minutes long. So I said, thank goodness we're not doing that version. The audience and I would just want to be done. But that was a really special role to play. And then I got to do American in Paris and Anything Goes and some other fun shows as well.
So how did you find your way into musical theater?
That's a good question. As a kid, I did grow up doing theater. I was part of a little theater group, and I'll tell you more about that choreography and things later. But I did that from, the time I was 11 through. I did my high school musicals, but also just ballet, ballet, ballet. I was like, well, that's just fun stuff. So I did it growing up, but I wanted to be a ballet dancer. But then what happened was after I had stopped, my ballet career was kind of over. I was like, I'm done dancing. I was kind of tired of that world. I was tired of some of the not very kind people there. I was always had to struggle a little bit with like the weight expectations that they wanted. So I got to a point where I said, that's enough. So I was kind of only teaching. And then I got to a point where I was not even teaching. I said, forget it. And I just started an internet business. I was tired of everything. So I was kind of done with dance. And then a teacher got my name. She needed a ballet teacher and she found out that I knew RAD and she needed someone to help train her kids for exams. I was like, no, don't call me. I'm not teaching. On and on. And anyway, I ended up teaching there and loved the kids. They weren't the most technically trained, but they wanted to absorb and they were fantastic to work with. So there was one student that was quite good and she was off at school and then graduated school and started going to like cruise ship auditions and theatery auditions. And she would assist me in ballet class. And so I'd always say, hey, Jordan, how are your auditions going? And she'd say, oh, they're going all right. And then one day she was like, well, it's really tough to go because I feel like I don't know anyone there. And we're very close to New York City at that point. So I said, well, I'll pull out my heels. I'll go with you. So I started going to auditions with Jordan just to kind of keep her company and then ended up really loving it. And I found like it was a little less, obviously you don't have to be quite as technical as in ballet, or you could use the technique in a different way. And I love the storytelling aspect. So Jordan kind of ended up doing some other things and I just kept going to the city a couple times a week for auditions and started getting kept through more and more cuts. And then all of a sudden I said, I better start voice lessons because they're going to ask me to sing. So I started voice lessons, which I had thought would be very easy because I had sung as a child growing up. But when you're 36 and just starting to sing and you really haven't sung since you were 18, it's not very good. So I kind of started a whole new career at 36. Like took me a couple years, but I got hired. Like I kept getting, to a further and further cut in the Phantom Call and all like more ballet ones. And then I started getting kept for other genres too. And I was like, okay. And I'd always had a kind of a knack for that performance. So a theater hired me for their summer stock. And from there, once I was able to get those 4 shows on my resume, then I got hired by regional theaters around and tours and things like that. But it was tough to make that jump because they see concert dance only on your resume and it's a little bit trickier. So it was good. It was like 3-ish years to make the jump, but I ended up really loving it and loved being part of the ensemble and telling the stories together and then getting to be dance captain and things like that. So that's how I jumped into theater.
What were some of the biggest differences that you saw between the ballet world and the musical theater world?
Oh, that's a fun one. Well, the first one is number lines. I didn't know about those. In the concert dance world, we have center mark, we have quarter mark, and you just hold all your formations from maybe you have an eighth. I don't know. Like there's very few marks on the stage. And I got into rehearsal and she says, go to number 6. And I said, what's number 6? And I really thought, I was like, boy, these theater people are really dumb that they need to have all these little numbers instead of just going like kind of inside of quarter mark or whatever it is. But that was the first one that caught me. And then later I realized, oh, it's maybe a good idea, like when you're moving a big set piece on, to have an exact place to stop.
Okay, so you use that instead of like maybe spike tape or something?
Correct. You'll still spike like scenery.
Yeah.
Or maybe a few light cues will be spiked. But yeah, like most of the acting things are, and choreography is set to numbers.
Okay, cool.
So they'll say, I need everyone on, we have 4 dancers, be every 2 numbers, 2, 4, and 6, please, on stage left or whatever it is, which is helpful when you're having to set it very, very quickly because most theater-y things are put together in about 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Which is different than
different
than the ballet world. Yeah.
Okay.
So that was a difference. One of the big ones I noticed. I felt like, although the small companies that I danced with were like a nice family, I don't know, there was something I felt kind of special about theater. Like I felt like it was still competitive in a way, but in a more like you can be good and I can be good. Versus I felt like, I don't know why, maybe it was I was just younger in the ballet world, but if someone else was good, they would take a part away from me instead of just celebrating their win and my win, which I felt like that was a little easier for me to do in the musical theater world. And it felt like more of a team. But I think that might be a perspective as I got older.
Do you think it's because in musical theater, and I'd have never done musical theater, so I'm just guessing, but do you think it's because there's more characters? So like you're not as feeling like you're competing for, maybe there's a certain type that you would be as opposed to ballet where it's like you can, of course we kind of do get typecast a little bit. Like I would always be the petite allegro, I'm sure, the cute characters, but like it still feels like there's a little less of that than maybe theater.
Right. No, I think you're right. And also to like fit into the core, you have to look a certain way. You have to stand a certain way. You have to be very uniform in a ballet company. And in a theater setting, they want more humans. They want to see, like, people want to see themselves on stage. So there is the quirky person, and a lot of times when you're in the ensemble, like I always was, you can kind of form your own character. So we need 10 people at the party and they shouldn't all be acting exactly the same. I think that made it kind of more fun. And then you didn't have to be exactly like the person next to you.
Yeah. Dance competition season is upon us, and if you're looking for a competition that's about artistry, performance, and growth, not just the trophy, then you need to check out Étoile Dance Competition. Étoile is a concert dance competition open to everyone, including beginners, pre-professionals, and adults, with inclusive leveling that makes it possible for anyone to score in the top overalls. And every dancer gets more than just a score. Étoile provides audio and video critiques in performance, technique, choreography, and overall impression so you can truly grow from your experience. Something unique to Étoile that I love is the opportunity for dancers to start the day off right with master classes taught by Étoile's esteemed panel of judges, all with professional dance backgrounds and teaching experience. Plus, every event includes a group contemporary performance with a chance to hone audition skills and build community with other dancers. This competition is truly something special. And right now, podcast listeners can get 10% off their registration with code BRAINY10. If you want a competition that emphasizes artistry, provides real actionable feedback, and celebrates dancers of all levels, head to etoilecomp.com or find the link in the show notes to register today. So, was there a moment in your career, and I guess it maybe all kind of has mixed together a little bit, but how did you kind of shift from performing to teaching and choreography?
Also, great questions. And it's a little bit of both. From the time I was young, I did teach. Like, I always assisted at my studio. No joke. I think I taught my first private lesson on my front porch when I was 8, and I got $2 for a half-hour lesson back in like 1983 or whenever that was. It was a long time ago. My grandfather had built me like a little studio in the basement. So one day a week I taught, mostly it was like homeschool kids and the people that came to my mom for their violin lesson. Then they'd come downstairs and have a dance lesson. So I did that from the time I was little. So I kind of always had a knack for teaching. I think it was kind of inborn in me. But along the way, it was always like second to my dancing. And then choreography, I honestly started, I mean, not counting all like the shows I made up as a kid, but when I was 11, I got asked to choreograph at this children's theater. A director, it was a young director. He was probably in his late 20s and he had started a children's theater and was having trouble finding a choreographer because there wasn't a lot of money and whatnot. And one of the mothers of one of my little homeschool students was like, well, you could ask my daughter's dance teacher. And he said, oh, okay. And then she said, well, but she's only 11. So he came and interviewed me. He came with his aunt and he interviewed me, and my mom was there with me. And he said, well, we'd love to have you. And I asked him, I said, what were you thinking? Like hiring this 11-year-old? And he's like, well, I was a little worried. He said, but there was something about you that just made me think it was going to be okay. And then he said that I don't remember this, but he said, I walked into that first rehearsal. I had my little bag that had my little boom box, and I put the music on and I opened the script and I started pulling jump ropes out of this bag. And I said, we're starting with the piece that's in the playground. You go there, you go there. And I just started telling people what to do. And he said, then I just wasn't worried at all. So I started that really early.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
But along the way, like my artistic director was very empowering for that. Like when it was time to do Swan Lake, I had a lot of character work. And so she was like, hey, would you mind setting like the mazurka and the shardash and all those things? So I was able to kind of get my muscles going in there as the ballet mistress. I was able to help with rehearsals. I remember when we did Alice in Wonderland, once again, it was a lot of choreo to set. So there were certain parts. There was like a little lobster quadrille with tapping in it. So I did that little piece. So I got to do little sections of ballets along the way during my professional career, which was neat. So it kind of set me up for what I do now. And then when I got to the theater world, once again, I was like, oh, I just want to perform. It's fun. I'm kind of starting this new thing. But I had always choreographed just all along the way. This is kind of the big moment. My brother-in-law passed away. He had cancer. This is about 10 years ago now. And 2 weeks prior to that, my best friend, who was my roommate at the time, her mother passed away from cancer. And so these two people that passed away, kind of before their time, like we'd say, really made me start thinking. So I was on the way back from the funerals and I was driving back to New York City. And I just remember praying and I was talking to God and I was like, wow, is there something that I'm supposed to do that I haven't started yet? Because we don't know if we have tomorrow. And I think that's for any of us. I just felt strongly in my spirit I was supposed to start like moving forward with my choreography. And I was in the middle of, performing in regional theaters, and it kind of wasn't even in my thought process then, but I said, okay, I'll start. So I made this little agreement with God, which was kind of strange because I don't often do that. I said, okay, once a month, I'm going to try and get some choreography on tape. So I remember it was October and I got to the end of October and it was about 6 days from the end of the month. And I was sitting on my bed and I said, you said you would do this and you haven't done it yet. And it's almost the end of October. And I remember really thinking, like, is this one more thing that you say you're going to do and you don't do, or are you actually going to do it? So in that moment, I called Ripley Greer and I rented a studio and I shot an email out to my friends. I was like, hey, we're meeting at this day, this time. Come and dance with me if you want. That recording, we just recorded like a 90-second snippet of some kind of little spicy jazz choreography. And then the next month I did something else. And the next month I did something else. So each month I just did a different style because I was trying to get some of my work on tape because I have a broad range of styles, but no one knew because back the videotapes from like 1995 aren't very good. And then I hadn't done anything. They look like white blobs dancing on there. So that was kind of how I started. And then from there, I started recording like one song from a show because I was like, well, I want to choreograph musicals, so let me practice that. So I did it like 3 or 4 of those and I would just invite my friends and so many of them volunteered their time and we'd throw it together in like a rehearsal or two and then go film it in a couple hours. And so that's where I started getting some information on tape. So then I had something to send off to people. And then we did the same thing with a friend of mine. Like I said, well, no one's hired me yet, but let's practice what it's like to choreograph an entire show. So we produced our own On the Town in New York City, and we invited a director who came in and did it for free, and everyone volunteered their time for that. And it was really special because it was on the 100th anniversary of Leonard Bernstein's, it was his birthday. So that was really cool. So just from there, though, then people saw me doing things. And then I got hired first as an assistant in a theater, and then they gave me my own show. And then it's just grown from there.
I love that. I love that message of not waiting for someone to give you an opportunity and just going out and doing it on your own. Because I think so many people think they have to wait for someone to hire them to do the thing. And you can just rent a studio and call your friends and just start doing the thing you want to be doing.
Yep, absolutely. And I saw that so much in musical theater. Like, and I'm sure it's the same way in ballet where they'd be like, oh, I didn't get hired again. I didn't get that job. It must mean I'm not good. And I would look at them and I'd be like, no, you're great. Like I'm looking at you and I know so much. And so I just decided, okay, well, it stinks that this person hasn't hired me yet or seen me yet, but that's not going to stop me from doing it. And one other thing I've had to learn is it's better to do something imperfectly than to not do it, which I think is hard because I'm so used to like, this has to be 100% right. But along the way, it's not been perfect. It's been a little bit hard. It's been, oh, we don't have enough rehearsal time. The last 16 counts of this piece are just not going to be what I would make them if I had another 4 hours. But it's imperfect, but really special and impactful along the way. So I think that's super important. Keep training, keep learning about who you want to become and creating that, but also you can do a lot on your own too.
Yeah.
Pursue those dreams.
As a teacher, how would you describe your teaching philosophy? What are some of the things that you hope your students are gaining from your classes beyond the technique?
Oh, good. I like that one. That's my whole philosophy is there's so much more than the technique. I think especially because I wasn't your typical ballet body. So I always felt a little bit less than. And there are certain teachers that will only teach the talented kids or the ones that have the perfect bodies, and they kind of ignore the other 70% of us in class or 90% of us in class. I never really let that bug me. I was like, I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to do it anyway. And so one of my favorite things to do, I love teaching ballet dancers, but I also love teaching like jazz and modern, like I taught at Martha Graham for years. People that just love to move, but then pulling them into ballet and finding that same freedom and strength and joy in ballet, because ballet is for everyone. It's not just, for the perfect feet and the perfect legs, although they might have an easier job at certain points. The lines might look a little bit different. I just want everyone to find their own way of being the best the best person that they can be, because that's all you've got. You can't change your calf muscle. You can't get another elbow. It's what you have. So if you have a funny elbow that bends strangely, we're going to figure out how to make your arm look as if it's the line that everyone's going for in ballet. So I think that's one of my favorite things. So I help each person figure out their body so that they're not forcing injuries or trying to become something that their body physically can't do. And then the other thing I really stress, I call them the non-negotiables of dancing, is that I think a lot of times dancers, especially ballet dancers, we think only about the technique, like I'm using my feet exactly right and my turnout's exactly right and all the positions are exactly right. But there is so much more than that. My non-negotiables are things I consider not hard to do as long as I think about them. So for me, it's musicality, being with the music. My port de bras is one of my non-negotiables because my arms, it's pretty easy to have my arms in the right place and follow certain pathways. Doing a triple pirouette may not be quite as easy. My arms, my eye line is another big one that I consider a non-negotiable. It's so important where I'm putting my eyes, my presence, my weight shifts. Weight shifts are like, once you figure them out, you're a fierce dancer. But so often we're like, I have to do the step. Well, yeah, the step's not working because you're not shifting your weight properly. I'm sure you recognize that. So I think it's teaching those non-negotiables and how to make you the best you. And then it's also, how do you behave in rehearsal? How helpful are you to the situation? Are you positive with people around you? When the director says, okay, I need to make this happen, are you the first one to volunteer? Like things like that form who you are as a person and dancer and make you valuable. And so I try and instill that in all of my students, no matter the level.
Yes, same page. So you've taught dancers at every stage, beginner to professional. Have you noticed a common thread among dancers who really thrive or who maybe make it to that professional level?
Yeah, good question. The first thing I noticed, I remember when I first went to teach at Graham, I was like, oh no, is it going to be different? I don't know why I thought, I'm like, what if I don't know what to tell them? And I walked into the first class and there were so many men in the program at that time and Graham too. And they were like these tall, beautiful guys with great technique and everything. And I literally just walked right by and I was like, oh, his knee's not straight. And I just said, stretch your back leg. It's the same things. It was so funny for me to be like, oh, it's the same. When you're telling a student what to do, the mistake is huge. Like it's a big mistake. And then it gets smaller, smaller, smaller. But the same idea is applicable to the professional. We still need that reach through the back of our leg or, whatever it is. You might say it in a slightly more grown up or refined way, but it's all the same ideas. So that was kind of neat for me to see. But then I also just found that the people along the way, students or professionals, are the ones that would like listen and absorb and trust you. And then also to be willing to not be perfect along the way. Because so often, like if you're trying to fix someone's pirouette, they're happy to fix it if the thing that you tell them instantly fixes it or fixes it in one or two tries. But if it's like not working, then they go exactly back to what they were doing the next day because they have to hold on to what they think is right. And I found the people that got the best are the ones that were willing to be like, kind of slogging through the mess for not long. It's not long. It's usually about 3 weeks that it takes to like really kind of make a change, 3 weeks to 2 months, depending on the thing. But the ones that were willing to be bad in quotation marks on their way to being good actually ended up better. And the ones that kind of had, no, this is how I have to do it, were still good, but just took a little longer to get to the end goal. So that's one thing I noticed along the way.
That's so true. I tell my students that all the time because sometimes you'll get a correction and it feels so wrong in your body. And I'm like, I'm sure you feel like you're so forward right now with the way I'm telling you to stand. But I promise you, you're straight up and down now, but you've been used to doing it like your pirouette's
too far back.
And it's comfortable and it's working for you. Like you can do a double pirouette like that, but you're never going to be able to do more pirouettes or even feel like completely consistent or do it on point. You don't make this change. And so I get that. Like it's uncomfortable and you're going to feel like a hot mess. Mm-hmm, and like you said, you have to be okay with being a little bit of a hot mess for a little bit if you want to get to the next level. And that's really hard in a profession that feels like it demands perfection from its dancers. And I think that's something that as teachers, I've had to struggle with and be like, I have that perception that like if someone looks into my class and sees my students struggling, they're going to think I'm a bad teacher. Which is like completely
not true at all.
Incorrect for teachers or students. I think it's all like be okay with the mess.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely valid. The one thing I started doing for myself first, and then later I translate it to my students, is I was working on my advanced 2 exam for RAD, and I was kind of trying to get back into shape. It's hard. Like you have to pirouette and turn in second and then lower your heel and stay in second position. Like, and I finally realized one day, I was like, this is insane. I realized that I wasn't going to be perfect at it. So I just kind of got common sense at it. I said, oh, this is never going to be 100% perfect every time I do it. So then as soon as I realized that, it was almost like the stress to be perfect was gone because it was going to be impossible. And it freed me up to be better and better. So I started this thing where I, at the end of whatever I did, an exercise, a pirouette, whatever, I would always tell myself one thing I did well and give myself a little pat and one thing to work on, because you can always find things that you have done well, and you can always find a million things you hate and that you want to change. So I literally just am like, I will go across the floor. I'll even do it in class to this day. Like I just took class in New York 2 days ago, and it was pretty bad because I rolled my ankle and it wasn't great. But it was like, okay, you did this part well. Your port de bras went well. You got your weight shift. Good job. Okay, next time let's work on like a little bit more of where you're going to be with the music or whatever it is. Always a thing that you're proud of yourself for and a thing to work on has made such a difference to the mentality, because we can rip ourselves apart forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that little game of one good thing, one thing to work on is key.
Yes, that's really good. Yeah. With your diverse background, can you talk more about the importance of being versatile for today's dancers? It definitely sounds like being versatile has opened a lot of doors in your career.
Yeah, it absolutely has. I think it's so, so important. Like, maybe we were on the verge of kind of how you had to kind of be better at everything. I think back in the day, like my artistic director told me stories of the ballet dancers stayed in ballet and the modern dancers stayed in modern, and they never the two shall meet. And she said there were very few of us that would go back and forth to both, but everything helps the other thing. You just have to figure out the way that it's helpful to you. So when I go to a contemporary class, sometimes my brain is like freaking out a little bit because like I'm like, oh wait, that's a weird direction to go. And then all of a sudden I just have to relate it to something I know in ballet. I'm like, oh, that's like a tourgite, even though it's nothing like a tourgite. But for my brain, it like helps me. And then I'm like, oh, okay, I can do this contemporary movement or whatever it may be. So it helps me to speak another language and to recognize the themes throughout the weight shift ideas are like super important. I remember I was auditioning for Mrs. Doubtfire in New York City when it was on Broadway. And the combo is this kind of like fierce jazz combo. And I said, oh, I'm going to be good at this. So I'm like doing the little jazz. The last 2/8 of the combination turned into some like just kind of hip hop-esque like arm movements. And I was like, oh crap. Because all of a sudden, like I couldn't remember how they go. Like I stress out as soon as it looks like hip hop to me. So I ended up kind of figuring it out. But I happened to be in one of the first groups that they called to dance, and I blew it. Like I danced great. And then I got to that part and I was like, darn it. And I messed it up. And I wasn't even that mad at myself. I was just kind of like, oh, whatever. And I was at the side and there were about 50 other people in my group. So I'm watching these other dancers kind of nail that last 2/8. And I'm looking at it, it's like, it's not hard. Like, why can't I do that? I can do coupe brise, all these things that the other dancers have no concept of. And yet I struggle with putting my arm somewhere on 6 and 7. And it finally occurred to me that when I think of ballet, like if I'm learning a petit allegro in ballet, it's all about the weight shift. I'm actually learning the steps, linking my weight shifts into it. When I was in that hip hop 2/8, I like wasn't linking anything. I was just stressing. And so as soon as I used to make myself go to more hip hop classes just to understand, oh, wait, you understand weight. Could you incorporate it into this other way of moving? So I think it's valuable in that aspect. And then it's valuable because you're going to get more jobs, especially because choreographers are now kind of linking genres. You're putting it all together. You understand things differently. One of my students, I said, you are going to take tap. She's like, but I don't like tap. And I was like, I don't care. And she loves ballet, ballet, ballet. Said, you are coming to my tap class. So I made her come to tap, and she and like 10 other ballet dancers just started coming to tap. And they were pretty bad the first year, but we got to like a certain point. They learned, quickly. By the second year, they're just as good as the people that have been tapping the whole time. And then she got hired and did 42nd Street this summer at a regional theater. I mean, how cool is that? And it just frees you up for some other possibilities of performance or earning some money along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Does the mere thought of audition season make your palms start to sweat? Do you feel completely overwhelmed with getting everything together on top of your regular dancing schedule? I've been there, and I totally get it. As dancers, we spend hundreds of hours honing our technique and artistry. But when it comes to figuring out how to put together a resume or what to expect in a professional audition, we're often left to figure it out ourselves. That's why I put together the Ultimate Audition Guide. This is your one-stop shop for everything you need to tackle professional company auditions with ease. No more spending hours Googling and trying to piece together a somewhat coherent audition package. With this guide, you'll be ready to conquer audition season like a true professional. We're talking resumes, headshots, dance photos, dance reels, plus info on how to find auditions, what to wear, what to expect, how to budget, mindset tips, you name it, it is in this guide. You are ready for this moment. Head to the show notes, grab your copy of the Ultimate Audition Guide, and empower yourself with the knowledge to approach audition season like a true professional.
Let's talk about your new app, Ballet Boost. What inspired you to create this app?
Well, probably COVID. No, I'm kidding.
That is a lot of people's stories. Like COVID definitely inspired a lot of creativity.
Yeah, it absolutely did. I remember being stuck in my New York apartment being like, what do I do? Where I think kind of it started, like I've taught people from all over the world because at Graham, they have a lot of internationals in the programs and then they go off to their countries. So during COVID, people were taking my class over Instagram and I realized, wow, there's people everywhere that love to do what I love to do. So that kind of planted the seed. Along the way, I just have often thought, well, I know all these people from lots of places. I would love to keep impacting them. I've moved so much in my career that I'll be somewhere 3 or 4 years and impact some people for that amount of time and then peace out, see you later. And so there's got to be a way to connect and still be getting great ideas out. That was one of the thoughts. And then as an RAD teacher as well, there's moments in the couple of RAD exams where you have to do, it's called an unseen on Shema, so free on Shema, where the examiner just sits there and says, okay, let's begin with your right foot derriere and glissade derriere and assemble over and then ciseau en ouvert. And you have to know what these words are, which I always loved because I'm kind of a nerd. So I would always be so excited to like learn all the different names of steps, but not everyone's that way. Like I've taught classes where a kid will be doing an assemble and they'll be like, on this step, I'm like, an assemble? Like the knowledge of the vocabulary is just not there. Being able to put some of those things on tape so people can learn. There are 6 or 7 different kinds of glissades. This is what this word means. This is how it translates. What's one step versus the other step has always been neat. I was like, well, then it can supplement. Teachers can say, go practice with this app. And then it's not so stressful for them to get the kids ready for exams. So that's also a thought that I was like, oh, this could be very beneficial for many people.
For anybody who hasn't actually got a chance to try the app out yet, can you explain what you'll find inside?
Yeah, absolutely. Inside, you will find ballet classes, and most of them are formulated to do at home in a relatively small space. Some of them were even recorded back at COVID days, and then some are newer and then the studio. So you can find classes, you can find just bars, so you can like supplement on the days where you don't take class. There's the allegro vocab section. There's going to be 6 levels of allegro vocab. Right now, 2 are done. Number 3 and 4 are on the way, but it's going to cover pretty much every jump you would do: petit allegro, medium allegro, all your beats, and on to grand allegro, where there's some hard stuff. Like the ones we're recording now, we're recording allegro vocab 4 right now with some of my dancers for my company. And I'm like, guys, I'm sorry, this is really hard. So having to just do a beat from a standstill to video it is just really is rough.
Yeah.
So that will be on there and breaking it down so people understand it. There's some warm-up classes. They're not up there yet, but they will be there soon. And then I'm going to have like a tricks and tips section where we talk about some of the things I talked about already today, like the importance of eye line or this step versus that step, common things that are confused or questions that people ask. So that's all in the making. Right now, I'm calling it, we're looking for people that want to try the app and be like our founding members, since we're still kind of working to put it together. But those are all the things that were on there. Oh, and there's a little community section where people can ask questions or chat together or things like that.
Amazing. What did you feel like was the biggest challenge translating all of this ballet vocabulary into a digital app format?
I think my biggest challenge has been my time, to have the time to edit the videos. I mean, I started working towards this directly like about a year ago, and it's literally just within the last 30 days that we finally had enough content edited and ready to go that it could kind of be up, because just my schedule was so nuts. That was challenging. I think one thing you have to be careful of online is this isn't meant to be the only thing that you do. You still need to be in the studio. Obviously, you still need to have training and people's eyes on you directly. The loss of that personal connection is something that you have to be careful of with online training, because my eyes aren't exactly on you. You're following along with me, but you have to absorb. So I think it's going to be mainly as a supplement for people as opposed to like the only way. It's not just the way to train. But that has been challenging. Like, how can I still connect with the people? How can they learn and see that ballet can be fun? I'm not quite as serious and uptight as some ballet teachers. And I say silly things. Like if I'm talking about like a brush into the floor, like I'll say swish, swish. Like I say just weird things that, some people might not humble themselves to say, because I think it connects. So I think that's an interesting challenge too, is like how to relay this art form that's just beautiful and classic, but then also to keep us engaged.
Mm-hmm. What do you see the future of digital formats or apps looking like to support in-person training?
In a way, I would have loved something like this as a kid. I would have loved just, following along, learning more steps. I used to read ballet dictionaries. Like that's how loony I was, and the history of dance, and this is what this dancer did, et cetera, et cetera. So I think as a supplement for like that middle schooler and early high schooler that just wants to absorb and just loves dance so much, it's so key. And then also I think it's like, the adult ballet student that starts and like has always wanted to dance their whole life and then get to it, and then they have so many questions for you and you don't really have time to answer them all and whatnot. Like it's going to help those dancers as well. I have friends that are like on cruise ships and things, and they're like, the app would be great for me on the cruise ship. I can just take class to stay in shape. So I think different people are going to be able to use it for different things. Like if you're on tour and you can't get to ballet class, you just pull out the app and do something in your hotel room. It's better than nothing. So I think as a supplement, as a tool, as kind of a little library, I know a lot of teachers that have been like, you've helped me so much with how to put together an adagio or how to put together an allegro, those kind of things. Like I think you could benefit from those ideas that are available online.
Yeah, I think there's so many applications for it. I totally agree with the app specifically. I mean, you're absolutely right. I have a Ballet 101 class, and it's a 4-week session, and it's from beginner, what is a plie? Like, where do you put your hand on the bar, right? Like, very beginning of every single thing you do in ballet for, like you said, adults who've always wanted to try ballet, just never had the chance. And I have so many of the students asking me, like, do you have any recommendations for YouTube channels or videos I can watch to practice at home? And I have a few that I think are pretty good, but it's hard to know, like, what is going to be accurate, technically correct, all those things. And so I love this idea to be able to say, here's another place you could go that I know is a great resource for that student. And I also agree that, like, as a teacher, when I'm looking at some of the classes, I'm like, I love that combination, because you can get kind of stale after a while. You have your combos you like, you have your phrasing that you like, the way you like to put things together. There's nothing wrong with that. We all have our style, but it's nice to go get other ideas and be like, I like how they taught that, or I like that combination. So, yeah. And again, I'm with you. I was the student who like had the dance magazine. I mean, I would cut out all the pictures, all the quotes I loved, and like, put them into a scrapbook. And I love vocabulary. I remember my first few years of ballet class, we had like a vocabulary competition, and I got the highest prize. Like I just loved that part of it. And I still do. And I think just like you said, there's so many different applications at any level for how you can use this. And I know there are maybe some misgivings people have with like moving into the technology, because we have this idea that like it has to be an in-person art form. And like you said, it absolutely does. Like the majority of your training is going to be that. You have to have that in-person teacher who's passing down their knowledge to you. But there's nothing wrong with also supplementing it. All these things that we wish we had as kids. This is
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. The older I get, the more I realize, like, because I watch people around me that have just kind of stopped learning and stopped growing. And I find that they just become smaller and smaller people. Like the things that are important to them are these like little tiny deals it's not a big deal. So I just feel like I want to keep growing. Like, that's why I still go to class. Like, oh yeah, that's a neat way to put that step to that one. It just kind of kicks your brain into gear. I want to get other teachers onto the app. One of my friends that I dance with professionally has already recorded some classes. So I'd love to get just different people on there, because all ballet teachers, I mean, the good ones, we all say the same thing in just slightly different ways. And one of the things I do on the app too is point out, although I'm a registered RAD teacher, my training wasn't RAD for a long time. I had a lot of Vaganova, a lot of Szekely. So I try and keep that in what I'm saying. I'm like, okay, this is your glissade derrière, except in Szekely where it's a glissade devant, or overs and unders. I'm sorry, overs and unders are the backwards ones in Szekely. And so it's just kind of pointing out different names for different things, and that it's not wrong. You just have to recognize the teacher that you have and do what they're asking at the time. But I think it helps to kind of open up the door for just different ideas, or expand you a little bit, or give you a little bit more basis underneath.
Yeah, for sure. I had that kind of Americanized training where I had teachers who were Vaganova, teachers who were Balanchine, teachers who were Szekely, and I do think that helped me, because I can go into any ballet class and I have my preferred way that I figured out. I like the Vaganova version of this, I like the Szekely version of this step, and I have the way that I would do it. But I feel comfortable in any kind of choreography setting or ballet class setting, adjusting to those different ways. So I think that's really valuable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I love this. I think this is such a great resource. I'm so glad that you shared this with us. My last question for you today is, if you could give one piece of advice to dancers who are pursuing their professional dance career, what would you tell them?
Oh man, I would say to figure out how to be the best you. You cannot be someone else. And if you are someone else, you're a mere shadow or an empty shell as to trying to be like them. Every person has something that they bring that no one else brings. So you just get to say, oh, this is my best way of doing this, or this is how I get to tell the story, or my work ethic is different than the people around me. So I think it's just figuring out who you are and figuring out, who do I want to be? What's the person I would want to work with, and becoming that person. And then just along the way, just loving yourself too, just being like, you're doing great, even though that was bad and this part was good, and I think just learning how to do what you love the best you possibly can, even if it's not someone else's idea of what that should be.
Can you share with our listeners where they can find you if they want to learn more about your work or about Ballet Boost?
Oh, absolutely. I have a website. It's elizabethtroxler.com. My film company is alangefilms.com. I'm actually currently making a page on that that's going to have the Ballet Boost information on it. And then you can go to balletboost.passion.io if you would like to look at the app. And then you can also download the app on both Google Play and the App Store. So depending on what phone you have, that's available. And you can follow me. I'm Liz Troxler on Instagram, and I have Ballet Boost app on Instagram, and my new dance company called Chronicle Dance Theater is Chronicle Dance on Instagram, and it's chronicledance.com.
That's great. And we will put all of that in the show notes. So no worries if you missed anything. Just head to the show notes to check it out and to find the app and everything about Elizabeth's work. Thank you so much for all this today. This was wonderful. I really appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you. I love chatting with you, and I love listening to your podcast. You do great work just sewing into the next generation of dancers. So I found you because I listened to your podcast.
Oh, I love that. Oh,
thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you for tuning in to the Brainy Ballerina podcast. If you found this episode insightful, entertaining, or maybe a bit of both, I would so appreciate you taking a moment to leave a rating and hit subscribe. By subscribing, you'll never miss an episode, and you'll join our community of dancers passionate about building a smart and sustainable career in the dance industry. Plus, your ratings help others discover the show too. I'll be back with a new episode next week. In the meantime, be sure to follow along on Instagram at The Brainy Ballerina for your daily dose of dance career guidance.